is on the myths of perfectionism. I'm going to tell you that I'm super excited about this one, and it may be because I'm a designer, or it may be because the reason I became a designer, but I'm a perfectionist, and it can certainly make things a little bit tricky. So I'm super excited to have Kerry with us today to talk about this. So for those that are new here to Deep Dive Sessions, these conversations and insights are ones that delve into our innermost workings with the aim to heal, grow, and become our best selves. So for those of you who don't know me, hopefully most people are beginning to get familiar with my face. I'm Bronwen. I'm in Melbourne, sunny Melbourne, as you can see behind me, which is great. And I am a senior product designer at Xero, and I specialize in design systems and accessibility. I'm also an ADPList mentor, so feel free to hit me up at any point. So before we get started, we have a little bit of housekeeping, and then we're going to take some pictures. Yes, Cami, I remembered. So general housekeeping for this session is just to remind you that it is being recorded and live streamed. So throughout the session, we may ask you to potentially come forward and speak or put your camera on. So just make sure that when you do that, you're comfortable with being kind of on live stream or sharing on recording. Secondly, as always, you're really going to get the most out of this session if you just kind of fully bring your whole self to the session and just be really ready to engage. We've got an amazing guest, so yes, just bring your whole self to the session. So without further ado, before I jump into the session, I'm going to take an introduction about the session. I'm going to take some pictures. So what I would love from you is for all of you to pop your cameras on, give us a big cheesy grin, and I'm on a tiny little screen, so I'm going to ask one of the ADPList guys, maybe Cece, if she's okay to do the pictures for me this time, just because I'm on a tiny screen. So Cece, over to you.
Okay. All right, so I'll give you guys a few more seconds if you want to turn your camera on and get ready. I'll go to a count of 3. We have 3 screens, so you're going to have to hold your smile for an awkward amount of time. Oh. All right. Okay. So 1, 2, 3. Next slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one last one. 1, 2, 3. All right. Great, guys. All good.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Cece. So let's get a little bit more into the topic of today. Is there such thing as healthy perfectionism? Can it drive you to be more successful? Is perfect even attainable? I mean, I'm perfect, so yes, obviously. And what's the difference between perfectionism and healthy striving? So today we're going to learn to recognize the symptoms, the costs, and the source of perfectionism, and learn ways to overcome this self-limiting belief that is anything less than perfection is acceptable. So as always, I'll introduce Cami, who'll be diving into the discussion with our guest today. So Cami is a recovering graphic designer. She has over 30 years of design experience and has worked for all types of organizations, from academia to agencies, from startups to internationals. Cami is now a transformational coach specifically for creatives. She is also an international speaker and an author based in Kansas City area. She is very much also known for spreading her good juju everywhere she goes. I have a new fun fact today, which I quite like and now want to play with her. Cami is an avid Boggle player. Yes, the word finding game. And although she has lost countless times against the Boggle app, she has never been beaten in person. I love this game. And our guest. So our guest today is Kerry Clark. She is a wayfinder coach. After having been a graphic designer for 8 years, Kerry survived and was radically transformed by a very challenging time period, during which she lost her childhood religion, she had a baby, and she earned her MBA. What transformed her was the power of good coaching. So much so that she sold her business in design and is now a mindset coach, a mentor, and an author. And she helps people design courage, purpose, joy, and integrity into their lives. Kerry has had many professions, which I find quite impressive, including equine science, balloon animal tying. I'm just disappointed you're not doing that for us today, to be honest. Design, branding, business, fashion, copywriting, and podcasting. Although not all entirely that order, Kerry, that is quite a CV. Quite impressive. So I'm going to hand over to Cami to have this wonderful conversation. I'm super excited. I hope you are too. Over to you, Cami.
Thank you. Thank you, Bronwen. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm super excited about this topic. It's not one that I personally have struggled much with, but Kerry is an expert. She's a recovering, or even I could say recovered perfectionist. And I trust her implicitly with this concept and with the content. So let's dive in. First off, Kerry, I would love for you to define perfectionism for us. What does it mean to be a perfectionist? Isn't it just trying to make something perfect?
Well, I have my definition, and I right out the gate, I really want to get everyone involved here. So, because this is one of those things that can vary so much between people, and our idea of what it is does not always jive with reality. So can we, in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, please just put what you think perfection is. So I want you to think about, like, let's say, how do you know something is perfect? So maybe a piece of art, for example. What are the first things that come to mind?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So put that in the chat.
It looks just like I imagine it in my head. Ah, yes.
Can't think of anything else to add to it. When it's ideal, it's really not achievable. No perceived flaws. Exactly as intended. No critique offered.
Yes.
Things without flaws or errors.
Nobody else could critique it. Oh, that's a big one for us perfectionists. Yes, perfect is always subjective. You're on the right track there. What else? A place I never end up reaching.
Oh.
Yes. But you still think you can, right? Like, it's still there. Beautiful. Okay, everyone, you're getting to it. What about a living thing? How could a living thing, which we all are, how can a living thing become perfect? Do you have any ideas about that?
How can a living thing be perfect?
Yeah. We can't.
Well
done, Juliet. Yeah, so if you think, the idea of perfectionism or perfection is something becomes complete, right? And how can a living thing be complete?
We can't. We're always growing. We're always changing. We're always evolving. Yeah.
Exactly. We're only complete when our lives are finished, right?
Oh, we're perfect when we're dead.
Yeah. Only when we're dead are we perfect. And then that can even be argued, like it's living things are perfect because they're always evolving. Yes, Federico, that is such a healthy way to look at this imperfect world we're in. That's so beautiful. It's when I first heard this from our beloved mentor, Peg Top, it kind of, as a pretty strong perfectionist, I think you'll find we have a spectrum. I'm when I was not healthy, I was as good as they get. But it's like, oh, well, I don't want to be dead. So it's just like it released a lot of those shackles, you know, like, oh,
No.
I can just pursue beauty, I can pursue excellence, but I don't have to always be bent over under the weight of this, my inner critic's, you know, definition of what perfection is. So
I love it. So
yeah.
so how would you contrast that with making something better or making yourself better and striving for perfection? How are they different?
Yeah. So like perfectionism can be our superpower. It is, I can't put too fine a point on this, is that, you know, like it is something that we can see things other people don't see, and we can make things so much better. But so that's a beautiful, healthy striving. For me, the trick is to catch it before it becomes an addiction. It feels for me like a runaway train, and I become completely disconnected from my body. It's like I'm all in my head, and there's like this, I can feel this slave driver in my head, but it's almost pleasurable, and it's almost like consequences be damned, you know, like and it's because it's like in your grasp, you know. But then for me, it's the fallout is always either my body rebels, and so I'm sick for a few days or longer, or I start to struggle maintaining relationships, because perfectionism for me almost becomes, not in a, not in a horrible, mean way, but it just becomes, it takes precedent over everything else. So it leaves me neglecting those who are closest to me.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Almost like it takes you almost out of your body because you're in motion and, like you said, a train out of control.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, and when it's healthy, I mean, this reforming part of us, this perfectionism, it can be so inspiring, so empowering, you know. It's like, oh, I can see that, I can make this happen. But yeah, again, yeah, it's just about kind of pausing, really. Like when I start to feel that momentum building, it's as simple as taking, because actually, before I share that part, for me, it makes me have tunnel vision, and it makes me not see other solutions and other opportunities. So, and I end up wasting a lot of time and all that kind of thing. So yeah, always there's an exercise called, because one breath is never enough for me. This is a sticky one. So at least, you know, like we all know about coming back to the breath, but counting to 3. So 3 times 3. So in 3 times, out 3 times, I mean, to a count of 3, and then checking in, like, okay, where am I? Am I frazzled up here, or can I integrate back in and use my body as kind of a compass as to what needs to happen? So yeah.
Okay. So when you're in the moment and you feel like I've got to make this just right, what are some of those symptoms that would lead you to believe, oh, this is totally perfectionism, this is totally my inner critic being the slave driver? What are some of those symptoms?
Well, it's funny, in that moment, it can be quite exciting, but over time, it's like a residual buildup. So for me, you'll know you're a perfectionist if you feel guilty, like the majority of the time.
Oh, that's a big one.
It's such a,
that's a big one.
Yeah, when I learned that, I was like, oh, that's not normal. Because that was just, you know, my MO. So yeah, guilt. It's been said, I heard this, Martha Beck shared this, that if you feel guilt, it usually means that you are sacrificing your own needs and desires for the good of either the culture or somebody else. If you feel resentment, which is also a big perfectionist emotion, probably the biggest one we feel, it means we're sacrificing what would serve us the most for someone or something else. And yeah, and that resentment turns into this overwhelming feeling of burden, like the world is on your shoulders. Yeah.
Yeah. Alistair said it. He said, oof. Yeah. That I can picture that guilt and resentment. And resentment is one of those really sticky emotions that once it gets in there, it's hard to just walk away from or release without
Yeah.
some kind of, talking it through. That's one of those that once it gets in there, it kind of nestles in and goes, yeah, I resent all of y'all, all of y'all.
Totally. Yes. And then you're kind of like super identified with the inner critic at that point too, because it's like, well, it's a very judgy kind of holier than thou feeling, which is not, that doesn't do much for connection. So, so I'm curious that the way that this often manifests for me as well is that we perfectionists, we at our heart, we really want to be good, and we don't see anger as a good emotion. So often that's where the resentment comes from, is we'll get angry, but we don't even let ourselves see the anger. And so we stuff it back in there real hard. And then, and then it turns into resentment, because resentment is like, it's not going to rock the boat as much. Well, actually, I would argue that it rocks it more ultimately, because
Internally
it's
more. Yeah. Internally, it rocks your own boat more.
Exactly. Yes.
Ugh.
Yeah. And it's suffocating. So yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. It's I don't know, what are other ones?
What are some other
I wanted to share this story that happened to me a couple months ago, because I am so honored and flattered that you said you think I'm a recovered perfectionist, but this is something, it's kind of like a monkey on the back. You just got to manage it, kind of. But I had to laugh at myself because I was watching this item that I wanted online, and this website has really good sales. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to wait to get the best deal, right? And then this thing sold out, and I felt so horrible, like I had failed, and I had felt so guilty because I didn't get it. But if I'd paid full price, I would have felt guilty as well. So our perfectionists, our inner critics, they will take any opportunity to beat us up. It's not, no matter what we do, So it's like, oh, if you can laugh at it, see how it's not a rational thing. It's just trying to protect us. But if you can kind of catch it doing those things, it's like, oh, it really doesn't make sense. Why am I listening to this part of my brain?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's definitely an emotional part of you.
Yeah.
I'm kind of throwing you the curveball here. In a designer's world, what would be some additional symptoms of perfectionism?
Ooh, yes. So this is a big problem. Well, was a big problem for me when I was in my design career, especially in the early days. I would that runaway train I was doing a lot of logo designs at the time, and I noticed the runaway train would happen, and I'd be like, oh, I've got 5 concepts that I think they're good, and I'm gonna make them perfect before I even present them to the client. And then I'd be surprised when they wanted yet more changes. Then my profitability went down the toilet, and it's like, oh, and then I would be resentful, but I had no one to resent except myself. So once I was able to loosen that up and just present sketches, and there's so much more freedom and play and magic in that, because the more we can play and the more we can create from our authentic place rather than from our critic place, geez, the more powerful and full of light we are. It's like, even just talking about it, I can feel my shoulders relax even more. It's so important for us.
Yes, that as I was even thinking about that it doesn't have to be perfect. And I've presented pencil sketches before, or rough wireframes for website things, and even messy. And I'm thinking, oh, they're not going to be able to tell what I'm talking about, or I'm not going to be able to explain this because it's not just so. And will they be able to imagine it? And it's always gone better than when I've spent the time and made it look like, I think this is how it's going to really look. They say, oh no, this needs to change. And they almost assume that I've taken it too far because of the time I've put into it, when the pencil sketches show that it's just an idea. It really is just an idea.
Yes, I love that. And it also allows them to be collaborators and feel like they're not just being like, this is your solution. And that's obviously, we all know that that's how it's meant to be anyway. So
yeah, it's the way to include your client in partial ownership. So they feel like they are also an owner of the idea. And it's even better, and this is kind of sneaky, but it's even better if you can make them go down a path and make them think that it was their idea.
Yes.
Talk about
Oh
winning
my
people
gosh.
over. It's kind of manipulative, but in a really good way, because you know that's the best solution. You know that's the thing the client needs or the end user needs. And if you can just nudge them down that path just a little bit, then you're helping everyone. So yeah.
Exactly. And in the end, that's what they've hired you to do. So yeah, you have the
Exactly.
skills, yeah, and you're trying to help them see the best solutions. So I love that.
Yes, yes, exactly. All right. Any other symptoms of perfectionism or of being a perfectionist?
I think for me, I mean, most of the time, like we've already talked about the inner critic, but it seems like we can be critical of everything. Most of the time it's just a dialogue in our heads. I mean, sometimes we can come out and be really critical of other people as well. But for me, the way it usually manifested was of just being super critical to myself. There's often a driving force behind it of you're not good enough. So you're trying to just kind of claw that back, by being unimpeachable, So yeah, those are the main things. And often as well, yeah, just I've said it before, but it kind of bears repeating that end goal, that perfect thing trumping everything. Like that's when you really know, oh, I should probably just pump the brakes a little on this one. Oh,
Nice.
yeah. And there is one other thing that I did want to explore with everyone here. For me, there's a kind of a strong or very strong correlation between perfectionism and idealism. And a lot of, on the face of it, they might seem exactly the same. Idealism is when you can imagine and see an ideal world, and it causes you great pain and well, it causes you suffering that it's not that way, and you could see how it could be that way, and if you were in charge of everything it would be that way. But so I'm curious, those of you who do consider yourselves perfectionists, do you also consider yourself idealists? We're going to just pop up a poll and see, or I'd love to talk a little bit about that if many people on this call relate to that.
And as a side note, if you happen to know your Enneagram, if you're a 1, a 7, or a 4, chances are you're an idealist.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And 4s are the artistic type, 7s are the go-getters, 1s are the what's the word? Kerry, you know the word.
Like the reformer. Yeah.
Reformers. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, it looks like.
There's a fair amount of idealism, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very much so.
Beautiful. Okay. All right. So what I wanted to just say about idealism is that, oh yeah. Okay. Nice. So I first heard a comedian talking about this, funny enough, who struggles with depression. Just as a side note, if anyone struggles with anxiety or depression, there's a fabulous podcast with comedians being interviewed who have struggled with that, called The Hilarious World of Depression. It's excellent. But she was saying that she thinks that many idealists struggle with those things because it is so painful to see this disparity between what is and what could be better. So if that's something that you really are feeling, because I'm counting myself in that group for sure. And again, that comes with superpowers and stuff. In fact, I'll share you with this little analogy with you that I really love. There's one of my mentors had the opportunity to go to a racetrack and drive a Formula One race car. And she's a very small, slight woman. And And when the guy who was showing her the car was setting everything up, he said, "No, you got to remember, these cars take a lot of muscle to drive. So you got to be prepared for that, because they are so powerful. You have to match that power. And even power steering cannot overcome the amount of torque, you know." And so she was thinking, you know, actually anxiety and that kind of thing, it's part of our superpower. It's part of the package that we were given when we were born.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you feel a little friendlier towards it. You know, it's like, okay, well, I can acknowledge that. And it's part of my genius. So I would, if you haven't heard of Byron Katie, and this sounds like you, please just look up listen to her book. Don't read it. Just listen to Loving What Is. It's incredible. And it changed everything for me. Well, one of the things that did. So
Awesome.
yeah, so that's
Awesome.
probably
There was
that
a
part.
really good question from Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. And not a question, a statement. Idealism and cynicism are kinds of two sides of a circle, or two sides of a coin. What do you think about that?
Yes, I have seen that with many of my friends, because it's kind of like an armor that you build around yourself, I feel like, because you can see it, but it's not there. So I'm just going to shut myself off, close myself off from it. I don't, let me just check in with that. I'm quite optimistic, but that's also a muscle I've learned to strengthen as well. So what are your thoughts on that, Cami? I'm curious. I'd love this discussion.
Yeah. I think what you look for, you'll find.
Yes.
If you believe the world is a horrible place and that things are never going to work out, that is what you're going to find. But if you believe the world is populated with good people who will do good whenever they get the chance, then that is what you'll find. And that has been my personal experience, especially now that I'm focusing on what's possible and what's good in the world.
Yes,
That's my 2 cents. If you don't agree with it, I don't insist you agree.
Exactly.
I'm an opinion of
I'm
one.
right there with you. Yes.
I'm an opinion of one.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about, and thank you, Catherine. That's a very good point, and Bronson as well. The cons or the costs of being a perfectionist. What do you get in exchange for being a perfectionist or allowing perfectionism in your life?
It's funny because what you expect to get is not what you get, in my experience. And again, would love to hear people's your experience with this. But in the past, when I have really fallen into perfectionism, what I am seeking is peace and order and safety and serenity and harmony, you know. But I heard a while back that perfectionism is actually the opposite of connection. It actually prevents us from those things. So what you need to do is switch it and become serene, become safe, become harmonious, and then you're able to create maybe not the perfect thing, but you'll have what you're seeking already. So then you're able to create the thing that is wanting to be born from you in a more authentic way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sounds like instead of trying to create perfection out here, that you turn that inward first and the outside things take care of themselves. That,
yeah.
and that's funny. That sounds like another one of the things it's a symptom. And once you take care of the real issue, then the symptom disappears.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's, going like it is perfection's kind of, it's a numbing thing, right? Like going back to the addiction thing, we're almost trying to escape something by doing it or fixing. Oh, we're big fixers, by the way, as well. But it's, it's, to try to prevent it, because our inner critics are so strong, we're trying to protect ourselves from anyone else being able to find any fault. But by doing that, like, have you ever been around someone who isn't vulnerable at all, who seems so perfect and so together? I have, and I didn't feel that safe with them. I didn't feel like I could open up to them, And so, yeah, it's I think it's so great to, I've learned to, for me, redefine it as I'm seeking to create beauty and because even excellence kind of triggers me into going to perfect, you know, because it's it's kind of similar.
Yeah.
But, you know, getting into the energy more of like a dance, or rather than like, I've got to check everything off the list and pass the test. Like, I'm just going to dance with this. It makes things so much looser and more fun. So
Nice. So if somebody's working on a design, somebody's working on, you know, wireframes, whatever, to think of it as a dance and not, I have to get it just right.
yes,
It's a work in progress, because dances are always, it's a moving target.
totally.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. What else are some costs of perfection?
So I'll tell a story about when I first started my design business. Um, so I was in my mid-20s, and I was working as a horse nutritionist during the day, and I was not very satisfied with my job. My boss and I did not really connect. So I was missing the art side of things, and so I was like, oh well. In the beginning, it just was very inspiring to think, well, if I take some night classes, I can, you know, design their marketing, get that sort of juice creatively. And then I became so passionate about that I thought, oh, if I open my own business, I can go ride my horse whenever I want, or whatever. So while I was still in my nutrition job, I was getting a few clients, working at night, and I was also working on training and showing my horse. So I'd get up at 5 a.m, ride the horse before before work all day till like 6, and then come home and work all night. And I'll tell you, I was high on the adrenaline of it. I was like, I'm doing it, you know. But my poor husband, I mean, we didn't have Madison at that point, but I was like, oh, he's fine, just relaxing on his own in the evenings. But, you know, after a couple of weeks of this, he was like, hey, what's going on? And first I was like surprised that it was a problem, because I was so addicted, you know. But yeah, and then I was getting all sorts of weird stuff happening, like night sweats and like from the stress. But anyway, so that's how that was the fallout for me. Luckily, my husband is one of those, he's just amazing. He was able to have the conversation very kindly, and I was able to get that pendulum to swing back to the middle.
Yeah, it's almost manic in your I gotta do, and it's so fun to do, screw the cost, I'm gonna do the things, all the things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh.
And nothing, it's funny, like some things were working, but because of how burdened I was and how stressed, everything was harder, you know. Like I can give you so many examples. Like the horse wasn't cooperating. You know, I wasn't fully present at my nutrition job, and then I was like high on the design. So anyway, it was really, looking back, I can see how, yeah. But I needed to go through that to, you know,
you learn
to realize, you know, you got to come out the other side.
Yeah, you did come out the other side much wiser than before. Someone brought up a great point. It says, I tend to lose the element of play when I'm in a perfectionist mindset. I get more focused on the end product than the process. Oh my God, God love you. What a wonderful comment. When you love the process, it doesn't matter what that end result is, and someone else can come along and say, change it, and you're not invested in that end product. And you can say, oh, yay, I get to do the process again, which is the thing you love. Yeah,
Yes,
that is absolutely beautiful. And I think that resonated with a lot of people with Yang, Bronson, Catherine. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well done. It's, you know, they say, like, if you enjoy, you know, we all have these kind of ideas of what would be the most amazing, the most life-changing thing, like being on the New York Times bestseller list, or having X number of followers, whatever it might be. But they say, if you can, like you're saying, Cami, if you can enjoy the thing that you have to do every day to get to that point, so whether it's writing, whether it's taking photographs, whatever, then that's what's going to get you there, rather than, oh, I've got to kill myself in order to achieve that 10 minutes of fame. That's not what it's about. Yeah. So
Exactly.
So beautiful.
Yeah. The studies have shown, and there's countless studies on this, that happiness always precedes success. So strive for happiness, strive for that enjoyment of the process first, and success will follow. If you strive for that success first, it's really, really hard to follow that up with happiness, because there's always going to be a mismatch there. There's a great book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acor that goes into the studies about that. Awesome. All right. And I, to go back to your point, Kerry, about harmony, so many people are so caught up in the work-life balance. I do a workshop that's called Work-Life Balance is Bogus. And it assumes that work is one part and life is the other part, and they have to be in exact equilibrium. When there will be times like you have a kid sick at home, or your spouse needs you, or your parents need you, your siblings, whatever, that is going to take precedence. And there's other times when you have a big deadline at work where you're working harder and work takes precedent. Yes. And that balance is elusive. It's always elusive. And it assumes that things need to be in stasis. Well, we're human beings. Nothing's going to be in stasis. And harmony is the thing that we should be striving for. And harmony, I think, is one of the ingredients to help unplug from perfectionism. Does that feel right? Does that feel true, Kerry?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That whole thing of, I love that we keep coming back to play, to dance. And as you were just talking, it reminded me of the ocean, like the ocean is never in balance. It's always on one coast or the other, right? And but it's so harmonious. I mean, except in storms or whatever, but we're all kind of governed by the same, things that drive the ocean. And that's why fight against it? We're here with this one life, and I just have some fun, it's as I can't remember who so astutely said, it's so hard to have fun, but interestingly, the fun is what is going to give you that harmony, and it's going to infuse you with the energy to make things good.
Yes. Somebody says, what are some ways you can get out of perfection? I'm so glad you asked. We're going to tackle those, and we're going to give you a whole list of things to do. Absolutely. Actually, Kerry is. I'm not. I'm just going to ask Kerry to share what they are.
Oh yes, I love it. I've got so many things. Before we do though, we'll come up to that one later. I was just gonna. If anyone wants to share any other cons of perfectionism that they have experienced in their life, I just want to really round this out just for 30 seconds. If anyone wants to put anything into the chat or raise their hand, have you learned anything from letting your perfectionist aspect kind of get out of control? Or what have been the negative parts for you guys?
Yeah. What are the costs you've had to pay? Alienate. Perfectionism can cause you to alienate from others because you start seeing them as competition. Estefania nailed it. It destroys relationships. Paul, yes, I hear you. Negative parts equals isolating from friends and family. Perfectionism can be a blocker to projects going out. It slows down the team. Severe anxiety from building up the idea of perfection makes it a lot harder to accept any kind of feedback, even the positive kind. Trying to be perfect really negatively affected my self-compassion. Never feel like you're good enough and will never deserve happiness. Oh, sweetheart, I feel you. Yes. Let me tell you, you do deserve happiness.
Yes, you do.
Learn that lose the part of myself I wanted to perfect in the first place. Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Perfectionism breeds isolation. Yep. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Good.
Expands so that other designers around you aren't good when in reality they are. It's a moving goalpost. You'll never achieve satisfaction.
Oh, isn't that true?
Well said, Kristen. Beautiful. So where is all this garbage coming from? Where is this perfection coming from? Is it, oh my God. Is it fear? Is it,
oh yeah, it's definitely fear. I would love to just talk about, and you will all have your own unique experience with this, but fear is the driver of it, but for most of the people that I have talked to, and with the Enneagram research, it shows it usually comes from childhood wounding. So for me, it came from parents that fought a lot. And I thought, well, I mean, I don't remember consciously thinking this, but I certainly, it's come up again in my adult life. And it's like, okay, well, if I can be really smart, if I can be really, really good, and if I can be if I don't have to have very, very many needs, then maybe my parents won't be so stressed and they will get along better. Or, if I can get really great grades, whatever, they'll be happy. And yeah, that has driven, right? It's
Wow.
honestly, I didn't realize that until only about 5 years ago, when I first came across the Byron Katie work. And I did the first turnaround, and I was like, I mean, it sounds so stupid now, but I was like, oh, it's not my parents' happiness, it's not my responsibility. It is, right? Like,
it just sounds heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's so, and it's, and then I took on this identity of the good girl, and there's always ways to be better. And so then that good enough thing gets reinforced, so.
Oh, does this resonate with anybody? Because this seems like, bullseye. Yeah. Okay, good.
Oh yeah, the 90%. Yeah.
Big oof. There's another one. Yep. Okay.
I remember bursting into tears when I was in college because I got a B+.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh.
No, you should laugh, because yeah, it's ridiculous. I did everything I could.
It just sounds so heartbreaking. Like, oh my God. My heart bleeds for all of you.
Yeah.
I'm sending you all a big hug right now from having experienced all this. Okay. And what else? Where else does it stem from? A childhood wound? Is there any, what other things?
Yeah. So the fear of failure is a big one. Because it all goes back to, what are we making it mean, right? So if I fail, I'm not good. I'm not a good enough. I'm not the achieving kid that my parents were proud of. So for me, this is another thing I noticed about. Oh, in fact, I can show you a picture. So I'll tell you the story first. About 5 years ago, we went to the Polo Open. So I love fashion and I love horses. And so the Polo was just like, it's like utopia for me. I just love going. And we'd gone for a few years before. And, because where I grew up in Utah. So the polo scene wasn't really around when I was a kid. So it's a big deal here. And so we'd been a few years, and I was like, oh, that's so fun. And a few months before this event happened, I saw this skirt online, and I was like, I'm going to wear that. Maybe that'd be really fun. So I put it on, and they do this fashion in the field thing at the Polo. And I remember looking in the mirror and going, oh my gosh, this is so over the top. Should I leave the house like this? But luckily, I silenced the inner critic in that moment and left. And anyway, they approached me to be in the fashion show, and I ended up winning this fashion show. And I'm going to show you it was amazing. I'll show you the photos, because I was so joyful. And hold on, let me get that one. I was so happy, and it was just fun, like talking about the fun. It was just, it was amazing. But do you know what happened after that? I thought, my subconscious, my inner critic was like, oh, you did well that year. Now you have to win every year, or you have to
no.
And it robbed me of my joy. And funny enough, the next year it got rained out, or no, 2 years after that, it got rained out, and I was relieved. Isn't that sad? Like, don't worry, I've cleaned that up now. But it's super, you just got to be so alert to it. So like, there's a fear of failure, but also a fear of success, because we know how hard it is and how much energy it will take to get to that perfect place. And how do you sustain that if you're trying to carry everything at that level? It's just so hard. So yeah, classic overachievers. Yes.
Yeah.
one thing
So
I really wanted, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I'm thinking then let me formulate the question a little bit better and think while you're continuing on.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So I just want, just in relation to that fear of failure, and I'm a fan of Queer Eye, and Karamo Brown said, yes, we had this conversation. He said because I recently had appendix surgery and recovering, I was allowed to watch a lot of TV. He said, failure is not the opposite of success, it is part of it. And I want to say it again because it is balm for our perfectionist soul. Failure is not the opposite of success, it is part of it. Doesn't it feel like a relief? It's like, oh yeah, I gotta put myself. So good.
Go a little bit deeper in there, because there's some marrow in there.
Right? Yeah, like, because for me, and I want to talk about introversion a little bit later, but I'm not an extreme introvert, but I'm pretty, like, I'm on that side. Like, I'm quite happy staying at home often, but without putting myself out there and having conversations with the world and allowing myself to even be seen, like, we often like to live in our heads, just stay up here, and you can't manifest anything from that space, so look, treating failures and what is a failure, that's also a pretty amorphous thing to identify or to define, just like perfection.
Yeah,
I think it's really important to just think, no, this is just like a pop quiz. This is just another tool in my tool belt that I've learned from,
Nice.
There's it just reminds me of this. Dr. Eben Alexander wrote a book called Proof of Heaven, and another one I highly recommend. But he had this out-of-body near-death experience, and he came back with 3 things that the divine told him, and it was, you're always safe, you can never make a mistake, and you're infinitely loved.
Oh, wow.
And I love to meditate on that, just repeat those as a mantra, just so it's like, yeah, it feels like a puzzle piece clicking into place, right? Especially for those overachievers and perfectionists among us.
Yeah, very definitely. Dorothy and Patrick commented something that I have that has been echoed with a lot of my mentees. Grew up with parents who left their country in hopes for their kids to grow up in a privileged life, and the stress to achieve upon their sacrifice was pretty heavy. That is a recurring theme I'm hearing over and over again. Like, I can't fail because I would let down my parents, and then their sacrifice would be for naught.
Oh,
yeah, that is some serious pressure to put yourself under.
Yes.
We're going to talk about ways out of that mindset in just a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think that's a big one, especially for our community, our ADPList community, because there are so many parents who have made sacrifices. And, as a kid, like, yeah, I want to honor them. I want to recognize what they've done for me, and at the same time, not go crazy under that amount of stress or under those expectations.
Yes.
So, yes, awesome. All right. Any other locations or where perfectionism come from? Any other tidbits you want to send there?
Well, I was gonna, Anne Lamott, she talked about this as well, about the childhood wounding and like being enough, but we'll go into this idea a little bit more. Well, I feel like actually with our conversation, we've organically already covered this, so
okay,
never mind. But one thing I do want to, before we move on from this, another thing that becomes sort of a pattern, especially in adulthood, is the rescuer or the fixer. And this is super, I don't have the graphic, but I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Cartman human drama triangle. Do you know it, Kemi?
As a matter of fact, could you believe this? I have this. I've never heard it called that, but this is what I've experienced firsthand. Is this what we're talking about?
Yes. Oh my gosh, we are so on the same wavelength.
I've lived this. I have lived this. Yeah. Go ahead
Yes.
and jump right into this. Absolutely.
Okay. So the victim. So the way I've learned it is victim, challenger, rescuer. So the hero must be the rescuer, right?
Yes. And
And then the perpetrator can be either one. So those of us who are, kind of like the strong, often it can be oldest child. It can just be perfectionist. It can be anyone who wants to help people. We're usually in that hero space. We want to rescue the victim all the time. But the victim wants to stay in their victim place as well. So they'll often go back up to challenge, keep challenge. I want to, oh, this is worse and this is hard. And then the hero or the rescuer gets exhausted. So they start pushing back. But it's a self-perpetuating cycle. It's terrible. And we all know people who love their story and they don't want to come out of their victim story. And it's, oh man. You can flip this into something so much healthier, which is the rescuer becomes a coach. So you ask powerful questions in order to help the victim turn into a creator.
oh, nice.
And then, and I can't remember the name for the other point of the triangle. It's blanking me. But anyway, you get the dynamic rather than just swooping in and rescuing, because often our idea of rescuing them is not based in reality. It's based on what we think perfection is or what they should be doing. And that causes all sorts of problems in relationships. It's kind of in some ways disrespectful. And I am guilty. I have been guilty of it in the past. I'm not anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, what is your perspective on this, Cami? Like, I would love to hear any more dimensions you add.
Just briefly, victims usually say, oh, woe is me, help me. And they're forcing you into the hero corner. But if you say, no, man, help yourself, you go into the perpetrator corner and you become part of the problem. If somebody says, well, you need help, here's what you need to do, that forces you into the victim corner. But you see them in the perpetrator corner. But you notice in this triangle, the only corner with an exit door is the perpetrator corner. You have to be willing for other people to think of you. We also call this the asshole corner. Forgive my language. You have to be willing for other people to think of you as an asshole, even though you know it's not true, to escape that. It's just an endless cycle. So that is in a nutshell. We can go into that in more detail later if you want. But okay, let's move on. We're at the top of the hour about.
Time's gone so fast.
I know, right? Let's get into the meat of it, into how we can actually overcome perfectionism.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to skip over some stuff so we can get to an exercise. Yes. Get out your pens or pencils. Write down. Nice. Okay. What I'm trying to illuminate in this is first of all, the expectations that you have for yourself. And this can be in any aspect of your life. So think about what you expect for yourself at work, at home, in relationships, in any creative endeavor you're going to do, any sport. Just write them all down. And we don't even have to do 2 minutes, Cami, if you don't think. Get as many down as you can. Stream of consciousness.
Right. Well, let's just set a timer. I think 2 minutes is good because that's not too long time. All right, 2 minutes and oops. All right, I'll let you know when 2 minutes is up. So we are writing down. What are we writing down? I've forgotten already.
The expectations you have for yourself as a business owner, designer, parent, or friend, or any other role that child, sibling.
And what would be an example of that? What would be something?
So for me in the past, my design work was not good enough unless it was winning awards or lauded in some kind of, public way. Or like for a parent, if my kid isn't eating vegetables every meal of the day, and like there's always a way to raise the bar, like we've said, but yeah, that's kind of
Okay.
that's how it has shown up for me in the past.
Okay. So expectations as a creative, as a parent, as a friend. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, we've got about 30 seconds or so left. I can see people writing. This is awesome.
Excellent.
Yeah. Being a parent comes with so much weight.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Or even, you could even say the expectations you have for yourself as a child of parents who have sacrificed so much. That's huge.
Please. Yeah. It's so big.
Yeah. Or first generation college student, or.
Oh.
Okay, that's time.
Okay, so for our next step, I'm going to ask you to go through your list as though you were deciding what you'd hold a dear friend to. So this is a person you love and trust to act well. Which of the standards seem unreasonable to you for your friend? Just mark those ones that seem unreasonable. And we will probably need like 1 minute for this.
Okay, I'll time us again.
And cross out or edit any that seem too high for your friend.
Oh. Which of those would be too high a standard? Oh my God. Yeah. I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm crossing out stuff. Holy crap.
Oh yeah. That's totally.
Wow.
Oh,
like some of these things they're so unreasonable.
I know. And like you would never anyway, I'll finish that thought in a minute. I'm going to tell a story about it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got about 10 seconds left.
Cool.
Okay, that's time.
Okay, so for the last part of this, what would be the implications if you applied these new edited standards to yourself? So just pick one tiny change that you can make in the direction of holding yourself to a kinder, more forgiving standard and experiment with it.
Oh, okay. So if I say my kids don't eat vegetables at every meal, and that is completely an unreasonable, and I'll start the timer. And that is a completely unreasonable standard to hold my friend to. So how could I change that then to be more forgiving of myself?
Yeah, that one's extra tricky because it involves trying to control another person.
Yeah, as parents, isn't that what we do?
Exactly, right? And so for me, it turns into, have I put vegetables on the plate for at least one meal? It's her choice if she chooses to eat it, but it's there. Like,
Okay. Or oops, and that's time. There we go.
Okay. So I encourage you to keep this list and please keep fleshing it out. And because imagine if you told your friend they had to meet all those standards, how attacked and how burdened and how horrible would they feel, and how also untrusting of you would they be? So we're trying to build some self-trust here and some self-kindness, but yeah, it takes so much self-generated pressure off your shoulders, and it just lets you breathe and create from an authentic place.
Yeah. That's great. That's a great tip for overcoming perfection. What are some other tips? I know you have buckets full of tools.
Oh man, yeah. I'm like, which one should I? This story really, or this example really stuck in my mind just to reinforce this point. So, I'm gonna ask. I'll ask you, Cami. Like, so imagine you have a friend and she's really amazing. Oh, okay. If you're a male or identify as male, whatever. Imagine the gender or however they show up as your own. So there's a man or a woman that you know, and they're really amazing. They do an amazing job at work. They're kind to everyone in their community. They do service projects, but they have a newborn baby at home. And when they get home, they slap that newborn baby hard across the face like 6 times.
Okay.
Right? Okay, this is a horrible example, and there's a reason that it sticks in your mind. This is why, don't worry, we'll get out of this. But would you say that person is living in integrity to who they are? If they're acting really amazing out in the world, but they're slapping that baby at home?
No.
No.
No, not even remotely.
No,
No,
not at all. Yes. Okay.
no.
So I'm sure you've all seen a newborn baby when they are born, and there's something so magical, so pure, so almost holy about them. They're they're also a whole lot of work, but when they're so amazing, you would never think I'm going to hurt this baby. So you are just as precious as the day you were born. And when you are kind to everyone else, but you beat yourself up on the inside, you're slapping that baby. So don't slap the baby.
Oh my God, what a visual.
I know. Yeah, because
Oh.
imagine what your parents would think if if someone slapped their baby. So don't do it.
You are the precious little creation inside. Why would you slap that?
Yeah, exactly. It's treason. It's so, because we would our inner critic, we would never speak to other people the way we speak to ourselves. And so that causes this fragmenting of your soul, if you will, or even just the way, if an airplane doesn't all have its, parts working simultaneously, it can't fly. So we want you to be able to fly. That's a Martha Beck example. I just want to thank her for that. But yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay, Patrick, I gotta say that's hysterical. Guests are gonna have some questions if I hang "Don't be a baby slapper" and needlepoint on my wall. I agree, though. Total conversation starter. That's awesome.
That's a great conversation starter.
Don't slap the baby. Or put it on a t-shirt. Yes. Oh my gosh. So it sounds like just gifting yourself compassion, the compassion that you would to any other human on the planet, is going to be part of your escape route out of this self-limiting belief and self-destructive behavior.
Yes, it's the only way. And just the balm for our perfectionist souls is to remind yourself, you got to get the enough out of your head. Remind yourself you are good. I'll never forget that our mentor Peleg Top. One day I was 5 minutes late to one of our sessions at his house, and I came in full of apologies and, oh, I'm so sorry. And he grabbed my shoulders and looked me in the eye, and he said, "You are good. Sometimes you got to do that with yourself in the mirror or whatever else." And it was like, oh yeah, I am good kid. Like,
I am the good kid. I am enough. I'm worthy.
Yeah.
I don't have to prove. I don't have to prove nothing to nobody.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
Nice.
man.
Nice. I was thinking is that growth mindset. I know a lot of people here have seen my diagram of love versus fear. I'm just going to share it again because I think it's just too good to not share. Find that button again. There we go. The top half of this is what we want to occupy. And having compassion for ourselves is part of how we operate in our future selves. That's part of the emotion you want to feel for your future self. That is your path of growth. Definitely. And patience, all that stuff, that's all up in this corner. And this is where the magic happens. So that's going to be helpful to you in your daily practice. Like, how do you self-talk? How do you when you like, for example, walk into a room and forget it, I say, "Oh, dummy." But I'm listening to me. So I don't say, "Oh, dummy" anymore. I say, "Oh, I forgot. Oops. Oh, well."
Yeah. I'm a human being.
Yeah. Oh, Chris is asking to show that again. Chris, that is on my website, it's on my blog, and it's on my LinkedIn post, and you can take a screenshot of it from there, definitely.
Beautiful.
That top half of the diagram is all growth. That's a growth mindset. That's an abundance mindset. That's where all your positive change, where you're working on yourself, that's where all that stuff happens. Absolutely. I want to point out, you're going to reach a point where the suffering from this is going to hurt more than the change that you're going to need to make to improve yourself.
Absolutely.
That inner work is never easy, or everyone would be doing it. You're here because you believe in yourself, so pat yourself on the back for that. It's important to recognize that you are worthy of this kind of attention on yourself. You're worthy of this kind of growth. You're worthy of this kind of improvement and attention. You are good. You don't have to prove anything to anyone to start this work on yourself. And it all starts with thoughts, catching yourself in the act, being more present and compassion. The next time you find yourself doing something that's following that perfectionism train of thought, don't slap the baby. Don't hit the baby. Think, oh, that's the old pattern of thought. And what's the new one that I want to think instead? That's going to serve me more. And you're going to think of the top half of that diagram and think, okay, compassion, patience, enough. I am enough. I am good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Growth is not infinite. Abundance can remain. Yeah. Because that fixed mindset is there's only a fixed amount of resources, fixed amount of time, fixed amount of, I'm only this way. I'm fixed. I can't change and I can't grow. But that abundance or growth mindset is anything's possible. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add before we finish up, Kerry?
Yes. Well, I just wanted to mention, we were going to do a poll on this, but you'll know if you're an introvert. If you're on the introverted side of things like I am, your perfectionism can get even more out of control because you're always comparing yourself only to people whose media you consume. So it's like the world class, the best of the best. And there's no point of reference in the real world. So that helped me have a little more compassion for myself and also get out there a little bit more, because it's like, oh no, I'm okay. I can do this, Yeah. And just as homework, you guys, like, make a date with crowd. We talk about setting boundaries. Like if I set a boundary around work and say, oh, I'm going to stop at 6, my perfectionist doesn't like that. It'll want to perfect it infinitely. So if I set a healthy boundary, like crowd it out with something really fun, like dinner with a friend or a dance class or somewhere where I have to meet somebody, because under Gretchen Rubin's systems, I'm an obliger. I do better when I have to meet someone. Then you have to maintain the boundary. You have to get it done, but you're bringing in more joy. And it's honestly vacations, fun. Like the more you can get out of that, your environment that makes triggers your perfectionism, the more joyful you'll be. So really encourage that.
Yeah, definitely. Sheila just put a great note in the chat. A sticky note next to my workstation reads, "Forever a work in progress, and that's okay."
Oh, gorgeous.
I think you nailed it, Sheila. Thank you for sharing that. That is beautiful.
Beautiful.
And on that note, we're going to finish up. We can still open it up for questions as long as Moshope says we can stay. But thank you, everyone, for contributing, for showing up, for being honest, for being vulnerable, and granting yourself and investing yourself in this time. So kudos to you. Thank you. Good juju to everyone who was on the call. Thank you to Bronwen and everyone on the ADPList team for making this possible. And we're going to stick around for questions. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
And I actually remembered to hit record.
Yes.
Yeah. Any questions, you can either raise your hand or you can put questions in the chat and we'll answer. Yes, Sheila, we're all in this together. Thank you. Absolutely. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yes.
Hopefully this has been very helpful to you. This was eye-opening to me, and some of the things that perfectionists suffer from just break my heart. Don't slap the baby. Don't slap the baby.
Don't slap the baby. Just cut it out.
Yes.
Oh,
Patricia
while we're
says
waiting
we-
for a question, I thought I'd share. A lot of perfectionists find the serenity prayer to be, even though, I mean, obviously not really, but it's very comforting. So God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference and accept the difference. I would add that for myself.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dorothy's got a good question. What's a good way to build self-compassion?
Oh, wow. I'm like, oh, there's so many, Cami.
Right. I can think of about 100, but not one specifically.
I know, totally. Well, the first thing that pops into my head is, and this is kind of a hard one, and I know you've done it too, Cami.
Oh, yes.
The mirror one?
Yeah.
Oh, the love letter. Oh, yes. Ooh,
yeah. So
okay,
if you can write yourself a love letter and say the things in it, and I have some of my coaching clients do this, say the things in it you wish that other people would have said to you.
Yeah.
Like, you are amazing. You are exactly what you need to be. You're a really good person. You're a good listener. You're a good cook. You're a good whatever. And you say the things really, really that you wanted to say. You stick it in an envelope, you stick it in the mail, and you actually mail it to yourself. And when you get it back, the day you get it, what do you do with that letter, Kerry?
You open it and read it and savor it and really receive it. And someone mentioned in the chat before that receiving compliments is really hard. And I heard it said once that those of us who are perfectionists, compliments just slide off us like Teflon, but criticism sticks like Velcro. So really try to increase the stickiness of that love, and imagine you're best friends with yourself. What would you say to a dear friend who is just exactly like you? Because I know, like, for your inner critic, they might want to override this. So yeah. And it's true, and you'll feel it's true because it makes your body relax.
Yeah.
And it makes you open. So yeah.
And
read it every day if you can.
Yeah. A fun way to kick that up a notch. I mean, if you're really, really wanting to play with the big guns and really, really get past your perfectionism, you open that letter and you read it to yourself in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And even thinking about it makes you cringe. Like, when I first heard this, our coach Pele gave us this assignment, and I was listening to the recording. I had to stop the recording and ugly cry.
Yes.
Because the thought of loving myself that much and so openly was, it was hard. Oh my God, I can't do that. I can't do that. And then once I did it, I ugly cried again. I had to stop and ugly cry some more as I was reading. You're so amazing, Kerry. Yeah, it was silly, but so much healing took place. So much amazing things can take place if you allow yourself to love yourself.
Completely. And to be able to look at yourself in the eyes in the mirror and say, I love you, and mean it. Like, the first thing you'll notice is all the things you don't like, but then the more you look, the more you'll see. It's because we usually only look in the mirror to criticize ourselves or to try to improve something. Right. So oh man, it's so good. Even just setting the timer for 1 minute and telling yourself, I love you over and over. It sounds so cheesy, you guys, and I know that, but it's so good.
Yes, exactly. Awesome. All right. Any other questions? We'll stick around. And if not, thank you for joining us. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. You're going to have a great rest of your week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.